Religious beliefs and core values are changing in America. Older people blame the youngsters for all this, and the youngsters say that the old generation, they're set in their ways and they need to change. How can we find real truth in all this? Hi, Wayne Emmons here. Now come on, when you saw me in this outfit, and even as I am speaking right now, you wondered, what is this guy up to now? Let me explain. We are on the cusp of one of the most impactful generation shifts in American history. Now, you may be glad to know that you won't be seeing much of me in this video. Instead, you are invited to go down memory lane as we try to understand a few of the generations that these sociologists have been talking about. We'll look at some of the basic characteristics of these generations, and then try to understand how and why our religious beliefs and core values have changed so much in America. And yes, the climax will be toward the end of the video, so watch all of it or you're going to miss out. A reference list is also posted at the end to authenticate the information you will be hearing, and an occasional number will flash in the bottom of the screen that corresponds to that list. And by all means, do some research on your own. Touch the subscribe button below so you'll know when other relevant videos are being posted, and touch the like button. Leave your comments in the space provided, and share this video with others. Now, as they say, on with the show. Here are some of the basic characteristics of generations over the past few decades. Generally born between 1928 and 1945, this hard-working, traditional, and cautious generation lived through a period of wars and economic uncertainty. Religion, patriotism, and traditional family values were at their core beliefs. With ages 76 to 93, most members of this generation have become inactive. The baby boomers. Generally born between 1946 and 1964, this competitive, optimistic, and sociable generation lived through the height of America's prosperity. Their life cycle has included self-awareness and examination of traditional values due in some degree by events such as the Cold War, the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, political assassinations, and so forth. The generation includes 76 million Americans at ages between 57 and 75 that are at or nearing retirement. Generally born between 1965 and 1980, this independent, self-reliant, and skeptical generation has lived through a time when both parents worked public jobs and divorce rates increased significantly. As such, they became more self-sufficient and learned to play hard and work hard. They were the first generation to interact with the internet. They were also the first generation to experience an enemy attack on America's homeland, reference 9/11. The group includes approximately 65 million Americans between ages 41 and 56. Generally born between 1981 and 1996, this experience-driven, self-centered, and risk-taking group became more educated than previous generations, much in part to advancements in electronic technology. Religion and traditional family values were replaced with feelings and sexual freedom as they leaned more toward liberalism. The generation includes approximately 83 million Americans in the age group 25 to 40. Generally born between 1997 and 2012, these creative, open-minded, and sensitive youngsters entered a rapidly changing world. Accordingly, they are becoming the most racially, sexually, and religiously diverse generations in modern times. Most do not feel that family relationships are central to their sense of self. The internet is the primary source for learning and entertainment, and electronic devices such as cell phones, iPads, etc., are virtually always within hand's reach and poised to soon become the largest American group. Their age range is approximately 9 to 24. Generally born between 2013 and 2024, this group seems to be more logical, objective, and self-aware than previous children of their same age. Indications show them becoming the most tech-savvy and diverse of any generation in American history. And while being heavily influenced by public school systems and mainstream media, alphas will most likely be far less religious and more liberal than previous generations. At 8 years and younger, alphas currently include 8.4% of the American population, and experiences include their parents being divorced at a rate highest in the world, and 26% of these young American children are forced to live in single-parent homes. The Visual Capitalist Organization has researched how recent generations have obtained overall power and influence in American society. The boomers currently hold the largest share in America at 38.6%, followed by Gen Xers at 30.4%. With boomers at retirement age, their involvement in social issues will likely diminish very soon. Regarding economic influence, the baby boomers also rank highest at 43.4%, and that's more than Gen Xers, Millennials, and Gen Zs combined. Also, baby boomers capture the most political influence in America at 47.4%, even though they make up only 32% of all American voters. However, it is estimated that the combined voting power of millennials and Gen Zs will increase significantly within the next few years, rising from 32% of voters in 2020 up to 55% by 2036. The category where other generations are gaining fast on the boomers is cultural influence. Boomers yield only 25.1% in this category, while the Gen Xers lead with 36%. The millennials, that is the offspring of Gen Xers, comprise 23.9%. It is too early to describe the culture power of Gen Zers and Alphas, but they are poised to soon become the largest generations in America. It is reasonable to say that religious beliefs and practices have played a major role in the history of America. However, significant changes have occurred in this area in recent years. Now, if you have been listening closely, you picked up on the fact that America's culture experienced a significant shift during the 80s and the 90s. And this was the birthing time of the millennials. So let's take a closer look at that generation. Millennials. Who are these misaligned people? As briefly mentioned earlier, they are generally recognized by their ages, that's age 25 to 45, as well as being the grandchildren of the baby boomers. Having been born in the years approaching the new millennium of 2000, they likewise were tagged with millennials. So what makes the millennials so different from their predecessors? Several things, but I will begin with the basics. First, while previous generations realized incredible advances in their lifetime, example, the moon landing, the overnight reestablishment of Israel, and so forth, not so for millennials. Always having known cell phones, laptops, gaming systems, and reality TV, they are insatiably hungry and virtually at ease with new things. Millennials were taught by universities, social media, and Hollywood that socialism, as well as communism and fascism, was better than America's free market capitalistic system. By a margin of 75% to 17%, young voters supported socialist Bernie Sanders above the progressive liberalism of Hillary Clinton. During the 2016 Democratic Party's presidential primaries, they seldom could point to any socialistic nation in history that came close to the prosperity, opportunities, and historical upward mobility of lower classes in America's capitalistic system. Only 4% of millennials have a biblical worldview, and the very small group of millennials who actually identify as Christians have seldom read the Bible to know what it says on most modern-day issues. Previous generations began their school day with the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer, and then on Sundays they attended church. These habits actively reinforced traditional values and biblical morality that made America great. And again, not so for the vast majority of millennials. Words such as absolutes, truth, and moral values were replaced with feelings, relativism, and personal choice. If you have been listening closely, you picked up on another phenomenon about most millennials. Their view of sexuality is seen as being without boundaries. Let's take a look. No pun intended. Now, it would be presumptuous to profile or stereotype an individual simply based on his or her birthday. Individuals do not fit neatly in a little box. And that being said, let's look even a little closer at millennials. There seems to be 4 subgroups within this generation. They are The socialist is looking for the government to provide free services and keep the wealthy from oppressing the unwealthy. They feel entitled to these services while believing that the free market system is a primary cause for abuses in America. As the tag implies, the social justice warriors focus on their perceived injustices within society. Their perspective regarding such injustices is aimed at law enforcement, Christians, conservatives, pro-lifers, the National Rifle Association, supporters of Israel, and any other person or organization who supports similar ideologies. And you may want to review another of my videos about this subgroup. The libertarians, with rare exception, argue that we should have limited government and more freedom. They don't want others telling them how they should behave or live their lives, and this includes parents, teachers, and churches. The libertarians frequently accept and even support an individual's activities regarding drug and alcohol use, most forms of sexuality and sexual expressions, liberation of criminals, and so on. The faith-driven Christians, by far, is the smallest of the millennial subgroups. While claiming to be Christians, that is, Christ-like, their pattern of behavior is actually anti-biblical. Their personal experiences, rather than Bible scriptures, guide their faith. They trust that biblical truths and morality, such as loving others, will prevail in the daily lives of Americans. You may have rightly concluded by this time that the persona of millennials is, if it makes a person happy and doesn't hurt me, it's okay. Who are we to judge what makes someone else happy? The millennials have taken American society into a postmodern culture that is resulting in a blanket rejection of much of what went on before them. Individual preferences and personal pleasures are the measuring stick for right and wrong, not previously accepted truths, traditional values, and biblical morality. In fact, 74% of them believe there is no absolute truth or moral absolutes, even though they believe this to be absolutely true. Go figure. Some important questions begin to arise within the millennial's view. Who decides what is truth? Who decides right versus wrong? If individual Americans make such decisions, are there not potentially greater than 300 million variations of truth? And what about the rest of the world's determination of truth and morality? Example, Nazi Germany and Sharia law. Now, one might think that all of this has been caused by the millennials. And while it is true that millennials, as well as Gen Zers, frequently avoid acknowledging their consequences of their actions while blaming others for the same, there is some validity to their attitudes, however. You see, every so-called generation has bad and good. My generation, for example, came through Woodstock, Vietnam, the Civil Rights Movement. After that, the Gen Xers elevated the sex craze with homosexuality. And then, with the more recent generations, we have people who claim to be a different sex than when they were born. Suicide rates and drug abuse are sky high, and our American government is riddled with corruption. As a boomer, I can remember, as a youngster, when we hardly ever locked our cars when we left them in the parking lot. I remember when we slept with our bedroom windows wide open to let in the fresh air. I remember when picking up a hitchhiker by the roadside was quite common, gracious, and without fear. And yes, I remember when it was expected that one would guard his or her virginity for the one and only person he or she would marry. And by the way, there was never a mass shooting at schools or in the mall parking lot. Frank Martin, as an NCAA athletic coach, said it this way, and I quote, "You know what makes me sick to my stomach? When I hear grown people say that kids have changed. Kids haven't changed. Kids don't know anything about change. We've changed as adults. We've demanded less of kids. We expect less of kids. We make their lives easier instead of preparing them for what life is truly about. We're the ones that have changed." End quote. I happen to agree with Coach Martin. Now, as the Bible verifies, and come on, read the Bible, the father has the primary role of being head of the house within the family. And unfortunately, the divorce rate in the U.S. is among the highest in the world, and 26% of children in the U.S. are raised in a single-parent home, the highest in the world. So here is the deal. It is high time we get back to being real families. Fathers, be dads. Mothers, be moms. Grandparents, stand strong with biblical truths. With so much confusion, hurt, and anxiety going on, our nation, the good old USA, needs to turn back to honor God. People say, "I wish God would speak to me and let me know what to do about all this." My friend, He has spoken to you. We too often just don't want to listen. This is His message to you. It's like He has sent a handwritten letter so you don't forget what He's saying. And I'm going to come to a close with a few more of His recorded words in this Bible. Think about these verses and go out and make the world a better place. This is Wayne Emmons, helping you find truth, and I hope you will discover it for yourself. God bless.